Hi guys, so for my scenario, it's the leadership training scenario. And essentially, what's going on is that four managers and seven supervisors are being sent out to a manufacturing production plant. So, part of the training program, the two solutions that I'm going to implement for this week in specification, kind of diving into what that looks like. I'm going to be focusing on the first solution, which is developing their leadership skills. And number two, I'm going to be focusing on their manufacturing knowledge. If you notice back in week 4, I hit on a lot of different, I think 5 or 6 different points that I wanted to cover in the 6-month training program. But for the purpose of this week, I just want to focus on those two. So basically, for the first solution, leadership skills, I want to highlight their ability to communicate, how to manage and oversee teams, practicing feedback. Yeah, those are the three within leadership that I want to cover. And some of the ways in which that I'm going to achieve that are definitely through active learning environments and games, which is something that we talked about in the Azule text. So for communication, I was in a class. It was ethical leadership. I think 581 is the number. Anyway, and we were in groups, and the manager was looking at a picture, and they had to explain it to their team members. The team members couldn't see it. It was just all communication, and then the accuracy of the end result was then compared to the picture that the manager was imagining. So that's a communication game that I want to implement. Maybe also games like telephone as well. And then we're going to incorporate those principles into an actual event. So I would pull in some manufacturing dilemma that required excellent communication, and I would allow the teams to practice using the same techniques, but in a more real life scenario. For managing teams, if you guys are familiar with the Marshmallow Challenge, that's a lot about communication, working together, but I'm going to add in the element of a manager overseeing that. So a lot of times in the Marshmallow Challenge, you're learning how to work with a team, and the managerial aspect is not really part of it, so I'm going to adjust that active learning activity according to our training needs. I'm looking at my notes at the same time. Practicing feedback, that's going to be really important for leadership. Last week, we looked about the different methods to deliver feedback. So we've got MBO, we've got 360, behavioral checklist. Essentially, in the training program, I want the managers and supervisors to be well aware of all of those techniques. But one thing that I'm going to add in, I feel that each one of us individually has their own feedback technique that they're most comfortable with. So in the training program, I want to explore what those comfortability levels look like for each individual manager. Everyone has their own style. It's good to be aware of all of them, but to really hone in on some of your strengths, I think that's going to benefit not only the manager and the supervisor, but who receives that feedback, the employees. So yeah, finding your own style. And then in all of these instances, we're going to be tying it back to manufacturing scenarios. So yes, they're going to be learning the tools, but right after they learn those things, they're going to be applying it to either a hypothetical scenario, maybe something from a case study, and then during the application, when you're really diving into the meat of the manufacturing industry and that world, we'll also tie in elements of storytelling. So that also goes back to Azule, which is one of the solutions that I proposed back in week 4. Yeah, week 4. That'll give the managers and the supervisors an opportunity to bounce ideas off of one another. They can feel like their own credibility is being boosted, and you can hear advice from others, and it's just going to be a really good experience. So that's all leadership. Now going down into manufacturing knowledge, the one thing that I really want to deviate away from is the idea of sitting in a lecture and just listening to the content. Yes, obviously, you can learn, but that's not what I want to do here. Going back to this paradigm of active learning environments, I want to incorporate workshops. So one little thing mentioned in the scenario was this idea of keeping costs at a minimum. If I can avoid it, I would rather not hire an outside consultant. I might need some kind of assistance in ensuring that all of the content, the protocols, procedures are covered within these workshops in relation to manufacturing, because simply being unaware, that could be a danger. So within the workshops, which is what I want to create, instead of lectures, we'll have workshops. Going back to this one text that I had from another class, actually with George Silberman. So essentially, I have it here. It's the active training book, and it's alternative methods to lecturing. So I want the group to learn manufacturing knowledge through case studies. So that's something that we in class do a lot. We'll look at a case study, we'll analyze it using that same technique. I want to bring it into a workshop. They'll be able to do those case studies maybe on a smaller scale individually, and then some of the larger case studies they'll work on as a group. And the reason why I want to focus on developing the individual and developing the group through these case studies. What if the supervisor and the manager are in a situation where they don't have anyone to rely on and they have to make a decision at that point in time? Yes, of course, there's probably going to be opportunities to gain advice from their colleagues, but I want to make sure that the individual is equipped just as much as the group. So we're going to be using case studies, we're going to be using study groups, demonstrations. So demonstrations is another technique mentioned in the book that could be used through role playing. We could watch videos in the workshop, and then group inquiry. So this one I found was really interesting. Essentially, you are looking at a case study, but a lot of the content is missing. The details are very vague, which is kind of what we started out with if you think about it. So at the very beginning of the week, we chose a scenario. The content and the solutions, it was fragmented, but that's the whole point. It kind of gives the team and the individual an opportunity to really dig for and search out those answers. They would have opportunities to use online resources. They'd be able to interact with one another as a group with the facilitator. Excuse me. So I think that'll be great. And then also in manufacturing knowledge, within the workshops, we'll use game shows and quizzes. In the employee development text, there was a scenario described about, I think it was something about like the bus drivers or the trade drivers, something with transportation. And they had like $10,000, and whoever got the right answer, like you either win or lose more money. So having that type of framework, I think, would be a lot of fun, and you're still learning the material that's necessary. And yeah, always using getting into groups, using real life scenarios. That's going to be critical for the application. Because I feel if you're only getting the tools but you don't know how it applies, it's kind of like, is this really helping me? So being able to see how how those two things go together is going to be essential for the leadership development program. So yes, those are my two solutions. I hope you enjoyed them. If you guys have any questions or comments, of course, please let me know. Thank you.